Gentlemen, we've been over the rules. Protect yourself at all times. Follow my instructions. We're going to keep this clean. Touch gloves now as you wish.
Every day we learn something new about Khamzat Chimaev. For example, recently Dana White said that because of some problems he could not perform, and in turn Khamzat claimed that everything is okay and he is waiting for a contract for the fight. And after these words, just a few days later, there is news that it is possible to organize a fight with Kamaru Usman. Hello fighters, with you channel MMA predictions. In this video, I will give a prediction for a potential fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman. But before starting this video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like it so that as many fans as possible can see this release. This fight has been heard for a long time. Fans of both fighters want to see this fight, and this is understandable since both are prospects in the top 6 welterweight and both are very popular personalities, which can have a positive effect on the promotion of this fight. In addition to everything else, their hype is real. This is not some Sean O'Malley who defeated everyone in a row and then he was greeted by the top Marlon Vera, to whom he successfully lost. Both fighters were tested by strong tops of their weight. Chimaev managed to meet with good representatives of wrestling and also no less good striker Gilbert Burns, who at the time of their fight occupied the third line, and Usman, the former champion, in turn, was not without the famous Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. Both he was able to finish. In general, the fighters are not just in these positions, they deserve all this with sweat and blood, and there is nothing to criticize them for. As for their fight itself, the management did not seriously consider this confrontation. Basically, only the fans gave the heat and asked to arrange this fight, but the UFC, this confrontation is not profitable in any way, and now I will explain why. The loser in this pair will lose a lot of hype. The main promotion will also be able to afford it after all, so why should they do this if they can hold the fighters until the title fight, where there will be PPV and other paid chips that fans will undoubtedly buy for this fight? What can be said in the end? The UFC is unlikely to do this, and in the near future their fight is definitely not worth waiting for. But we can disassemble it and understand who will be stronger and will be able to declare himself as a top welterweight fighter. In this video, we will analyze everything inside and out in order to understand which of the athletes is on Olympus and who is just climbing it. Kamaru Usman is a former champion. For a moment, do not forget his merits, because he can really stop the hype of bores. Percussive style. We start with the percussion style. The first in line is Khamzat. What can be said about the striking technique of the Greyhound? As I stated more than once, Chimaev does not have such a base in his hands. Well, he does not know how to box competently. What can you do? But God rewarded him with excellent punch power. If you don't believe me, you can watch his fight against Ikram Aliskerov and Gerald Meerschaert yourself. There all the power of Chimaev is clearly shown. But as I said, Chimaev is not particularly strong in boxing technique. We could see this in the fight against Gilbert, who easily avoided Khamzat's attacks and counterattacked twice as strongly. So in the stand against Shavkat, he needs to be extremely careful, since he must be aware that in this fight the rack will not be on his side. If he refuses to accept this factor, then the night for Chimaev may become sad. Let's move on to the shock component of Kamaru Usman. Judging by this, then all this can be divided into 2 stages. The first is before the fight with Leon Edwards, when Kamaru looked better and better in the rack with each fight, knocked Colby down twice, was able to cut Masvidal tightly, even at first interrupt Leon Edwards. Look at how cool his striking technique was, but after that very knockout, Kamaru no longer became the same. In the second fight he was much more compressed than then. Leon easily interrupted the Nigerian in his arms. His spent kicks flew especially well on the body. and legs. And I don't know how to judge Kamaru specifically, because his striking skills seem to be at a high level. But who knows, suddenly he won't come back the same. Maybe everything is okay with his skills, but mentally it's definitely not. It seems to me that he will think about this knockout all the time and try to block punches as much as possible and at the same time not respond. And what result can be summed up? Both are pronounced fighters, but Usman showed that he can work in the rack, and therefore a slight advantage will be for him. Playing from below. Let's move on to wrestling skills, and this time we will start with Kamaru Usman, who has also been showing himself badly lately. It became much more difficult for him to translate his rivals. The same middle peasant named Jorge Masvidal defended himself from most of the attempts. Moreover, as I know, Kamaru has problems with his knees. He had them before, but then his age allowed him to perform. But now that he is already 36 years old, he begins to feel all that pain in the aisles, and therefore, instead of translations, we can expect a boring fuss around the cage. You should not remember Usman from the time of the fight with Rafael dos Anjos. Then the time has already passed, and Kamaru's top wrestling skills also remain there. Look at how he fought in the second fight with Leon. The Briton easily defended himself from all the transfers of the Nigerian, and in the second fight he completely translated and made the former champion nervous himself. And here Khamzat can begin to build his game, since it is there that he likes to end fights. Kevin Holland and many other UFC fighters suffered from the fight of the Chechen Greyhound. Khamzat has always had and remains this trump card in his pocket, and he uses it in every fight, but only except for the fight with Burns. From the very beginning of the round, Khamzat presses you to the cage and then throws you down with an amplitude throw, or drags you across the entire octagon to his corner. This has already happened in the practice of the Greyhound. But in this fight, everything will not be as simple as it seems, since his opponent is also not bad in wrestling. And therefore Chimaev should also not expect that he will easily be able to fight the Kazakh. He also has skills on the ground, which we will talk about a little later, so Chimaev should prepare with full dedication and understand in which situations it is better to translate. Usman will definitely be stronger than many rivals with whom Khamzat fought. At least I think he will surpass the skills of the same Gilbert. And what can I say in the end? Because of Kamaru's unstable knees, I will still give preference to Khamzat. Cardio spirit. Let's move on to the breather, and the first in line is Khamzat. And here is the trouble. Because in the fight against Gilbert, for a moment this is the only fight of Khamzat in which he reached the decision of the judges, so he did not show himself in the best light. We all saw that at the end he begins to slow down and his passes, strength in his hands abruptly disappears. As for Kamaru, we can say without a doubt that he will be better than Shavkat. He has more 5-round fights than Khamzat, has early victories, and as you already understood, Usman will be the favorites. As for the spirit, of course I will choose Chimaev, and I think everyone understands why. Forecast. I think that in this fight Khamzat Chimaev will hold the dinner. I will not say right away that in order to defeat Usman, you need to surprise him all the time, and given the pressure that Boers has, this can be done. The future of fighters. Chimaev, after the victory over such a top with a high degree of probability, will receive a title fight. I have zero doubts about this. As for Usman, several defeats in a row will clearly lower him in the ratings, and he will oppose not the top opposition.